Hola. Buenas tardes. Me alegra estar aquí. And that's all the Spanish I got, but I'm trying. But I'm very excited to be here with you in Madrid to talk to you a little bit about getting out of the build trap. So I wrote this book. It came out in 2018 called Escaping the Build Trap. And in the book, I was describing what a good product-led organization looks like. And I want to let you know, too, ya puedes comprarlo en español in Amazon. We just translated it. So as of Tuesday, you can buy it now. So when I wrote this book, it got a lot of really good traction. And in it, I'm talking about what the role is of a product manager, what's our job, what's a good product strategy, and how do we set up organizations for success. And when I first started consulting and doing this about 9 years ago, nobody knew what a product manager was. Even in New York City, I was a product manager, and people were like, a what? What do you do? So even in New York. And now, though, it's recognized, right? We are a role. You're seeing this a lot more in organizations, and people know it's important, which is great. So since the book came out, I've realized that we've gotten good at certain things. We've gotten really good at doing these practices as product managers. So we got much better at defining the problem, doing our MVP testing, although some people still don't know what an MVP is. We've gotten better at prototyping. We're doing our story mapping. And it's been good. So as product managers, we're getting much better at our jobs and at our craft of doing our work. So that's fantastic. This used to be the only thing I taught a very long time ago. So that's great. And now people are getting really excited about the idea of organizations being product-led. So you hear CEOs come to me and they say, I want to be product-led, right? Or a lot of product managers say, hey, I want our organization to be product-led. But we still have a few gaps. And I've noticed those because I started this podcast called the Product Thinking Podcast. And on the Dear Melissa segment, you can write me your questions. So at the end of 2022, I went through and said, what's the most frequent questions I get? And the first one was, how do I scale product management across a larger organization? So, our product managers, they're all there. What do I do to make this work in a broader organization? And then number two was, how do I get buy-in from my leadership to actually do this? So we're all a little bit excited about being product-led, and we're energized by this, but we're a little bit confused on how to get there. And when product managers go to introduce this to organizations, they go, hey, everybody, we're going to be product-led. And the organization goes, what? I don't want to be product-led, right? And it feels like a struggle where we're like, be product-led. And sales is like, no, why would I do that? So we're still kind of facing these challenges. We know it's good for us. A lot of people know it's great to be product-led, but the rest of the organization is struggling. So why, right? Why are they struggling? It's because they think product-led means product management rules everything, right? They're the boss. And they think it's like product managers going, listen to me, peasants. You will do whatever I tell you to do. Right? We make all the decisions. How dare you make a comment about the product? Right? How dare you? So we, though, realize that that's not really true as product managers, but the rest of the organization sees this term and goes, I'm scared, right? I'm scared about this product-led thing. There's no sales in the term product-led. There's no marketing in the term product-led. Where does engineering fit in? So we know that that's not true because we know that product-led means that the product leads our growth. It's not about product managers making all the decisions. It's that we look at our business and we say, we choose to scale through repeatable products, right? We choose to scale through repeatable software products, and that's the thing that's going to lead our growth. We're not selling things ahead of our roadmap. We're not trying to promise all these services to people. We're selling, and we're not a custom software shop, right? We choose to build a few great products and sell those and make a lot of money. And that's what product-led means. but people don't know that. And as product managers, we have to bring that to the rest of the organization and remind them that it's not just us that feeds into the decision of the product, right? We can't actually do a lot of stuff on our own. We need to get the information from other people and bring it in to make those decisions. So as a product manager, we need to be looking at what's the customer and user research, right? What's the market research? What's our position in the market? How much money could we possibly make if we solve these problems? We need to be looking at the financial data and the implication on sales. So if we build these things, when can we start making money? We have to look at user data. We have to look at technology implications, like how can AI help us actually achieve our goals? And then as product people, what we do is we synthesize that and figure out which direction we go in, right? Where should the product lead? So we're leading the product, but we still need inputs from a lot of other people. So if this is the case, and this is how we do great product management, where are we going wrong, right? Why are people still scared about being product-led? And I think it's because as product people, we're really good at working small right now, but we're not great at thinking big, about thinking how this affects the rest of the organization and the rest of the businesses. So if you think about being product-led as more of a culture shift, there's some things that we need to keep in mind. So I really like this definition of what a culture is, what a culture is in organizations. And they say, while national cultures are based on deeply held values, organizational cultures are more concerned with practices, right? And the repetition of these practices or behavior within a workplace help to define the organization's culture. So our culture is not just the beliefs and the values, right? Because you might have a bunch of beliefs and values in product, and the CEO in sales has their values and beliefs, but it's what are you doing on a daily basis, right? How is your organization working, and how are the people in the organization working that really defines our culture? So if we're thinking about being product-led, what are we doing on a daily basis, right, to bring that to the rest of the organization? And when I go and I observe what practices we're doing all these. And these are our practices, right? These are just for product managers. They're not for the rest of the organization, UX as well, like product managers and designers. But they're not how we involve sales, right? They're not how we involve marketing. It's not about go-to-market strategy, planning that with marketing and figuring that out. It's not about finance. So we're just really focusing on our practices and our individual practices when we talk about product management. So what starts to happen is that we start to get like a dysfunctional kitchen, right? And I like this analogy because imagine if you're on a team of chefs, right? Same with sales, marketing, product, engineering. And you're a great chef and you're fantastic at vegetables. You know how to make everything great with vegetables. The other person on the team, let's call them sales, they're fantastic at cooking the fish, and they're great at that piece. And then you got your marketing over here with the sauce. They put the sauce on, right? If you're not coordinating all together and figuring out how all those dishes come together, let's say you make a delicious fish and you put like an awful sauce on it, it's gonna taste awful. It's gonna taste like crap, right? And this is what happens in our organizations. Our products end up not being great. So we need to come together instead and start to think about what's the menu, right? We want to operate more like a 3-star Michelin restaurant, like diverso, right? Did you say that way? We want to be that. We don't want to be McDonald's. So we got to figure out how all of these different pieces come together to create a great, unique product for us. And that's about bringing the team together. It's about how everybody contributes to making the product a success. Because we don't sell the product on our own usually. We're not usually doing the marketing. We're not usually doing the finance behind running the business. So we need to bring people together to really be product-led. So again, we have to start thinking about why are people scared to be a great running team like this? Why are the other functions freaking out? Well, there's really 2 things behind that. It's one, a lack of knowledge. When you say, go be product-led, they go, how? Right? Like, how? How am I supposed to do that? And then the other piece is a lack of control, right? And that one we probably feel a little bit more. But the lack of control means, okay, I was sales, and I was making all these decisions, right? and now you came in here and said, no more decisions, sales. I make all the decisions now. And they start to go, oh, I feel out of control. I don't see how I fit into this picture. And I want you to think about that for a minute too, right? Like, think about sales. I know product and sales don't like each other, but think about if your organization says, hey, we're going to do this thing, we're going to become product-led. Sales, you can't start selling whatever you want anymore. And 50% of your compensation is tied to how much you sell. Wouldn't you be scared? Right? Wouldn't you be scared if somebody came in and said, no, 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 you don't get to decide anymore? So we have to remember that, right? We have to really figure out how to put them in the picture and teach them that this is going to be good for them at the end of the day. So to do that, we actually need to focus on two different things. One of them is product strategy. We need a strategy that really tells us what we should be building as an organization, right? How we win. Then we need product operations. And product operations is newer now. You may have heard that term coming out quite a bit. Product operations says how we're actually going to work together as an organization, not just a product team, but as an organization to win, right? So that's the how. And product strategy is the what. So we need those two things, and they're the things that are most lacking in a lot of organizations. We start with those practices, but we forget these pieces, and that's when we start to feel a lot of friction. So the first thing we really need to do is focus on product strategy. That's the one major thing I see missing at a lot of organizations. And product strategy is your menu, right? Like, it's your food, it's your dishes that are carefully crafted. But it's not just that, it's also the experience, right? It's the service, it's the experience of the restaurants that bring it all together. So we need to define what that is. But like I said, most organizations are missing it. So how can you tell if you're missing it? Well, there's actually 3 observable gaps here that tell us if we're not doing product strategy well. So these were made by Stephen Bungay. He wrote this book called The Art of Action, and it's a phenomenal book on strategy. I highly recommend you read it. And he really describes this as we have outcomes, plans, and actions that make up our strategy. And when those things are not aligned, and when there's things missing, let's say the plans are missing, the outcomes missing, the actions are missing, we start to observe behaviors in organizations. So for instance, if the outcomes and the plans are not matching up, or we're not achieving outcomes with our plans, that's the knowledge gap. So the knowledge gap is when the organization is craving more information. So have you ever had a CEO, maybe a founder, come around and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then look through Jira and be like, oh, I'll read all the user stories and figure it out. I have. And they're not getting the information they need. So they're like demanding more and more information. Give me that report. Give me more information. Tell me what you're doing all the time. That's because they're not sure what the plans are and how they're going to achieve the outcomes. The next one we have is the alignment gap. And that's really the difference between our plans and our actions. So there might be a plan at the organization that's like in the minds of the C-suite, where they're like, we're going to make more money by going up market. And then the teams are not aligned, right? We're spreading ourselves thin. We're not really seeing that go up and down, and that's the alignment gap. And when you observe the alignment gap, what happens is the leaders start dictating exactly what you should do. So you may have started being more product-led, and then the leaders are like, no, actually build this thing for me. That's the alignment gap. They can't see how your actions are going to reach their strategy, their plans. There's a gap there. The last one we see is the effects gap. So that's really the actions and the outcomes. Now, let's say you've been building a bunch of stuff, and a year goes by. You're trying to be product-led, but we don't see a measurable increase in money in the organization, right? We're not hitting our goals. We might not even have goals, but the leadership is like, no, we're not hitting our goals. That's the effects gap. So what do? They try to get more control, right? They try to get control over the situation, and then we start blaming everybody. It was technology's fault. It was product's fault. It's sales' fault, right? And the organization goes into a whole spiral, and it's not good. So all of this is really caused by a lack of a cohesive product strategy and a company strategy. So most company strategies are like this. Company vision, this is where we want to go. And some of those are not even great. And then we go, solutions, right? What are the teams doing? What's the work in Jira? And there's nothing in the middle, right? So the company vision half the time is make money. You're like, okay, how, right? How am I supposed to make money? Like, how would you like me to do that? Should I sell books, right? Like, what's the strategy here? So a lot of them are like that. So they go super high level, and then they go, boom, what are the teams doing? And in reality, we actually need a lot of layers of strategy. Now, this really scales based on how big your organization is. So if you are a startup, first of all, this does not apply, and I'll explain in a minute. But if you are a smaller company with a single product line, this middle piece, that's the portfolio strategy, goes away. So let's go back and look at this for a second. So what we do is we have this company vision at the top. And that company vision is about where is the business going to go, where's our company going to go in the next 5 to 10 years. It depends how big your company is. Bigger the company, longer the term. Smaller the company, shorter the term. So just think about it scaling. It doesn't have to be exactly what you see here. Think about scaling. Now, this really should talk about what's my value for customers, what's my position in the market, how are we going to win, how are we different. The vision is not make money. The vision is not be the best bank. You're like, great, every bank has that vision, so what's the best, right? It's really specifying what you want to be and how you want to win. That's the vision. And you're not there yet. It's not what you do today. Then we look at the company's strategic intents. And that tells us where we want to focus for the next 1 to 3 years on high-level business goals. Now, these are not building features. This is not building products. This is, we want to enter the enterprise. We want to go down market and be able to sell a bunch of things to individuals. That's like what Adobe did, right? We want to be able to expand geographically across Europe. We want to enter another territory. These are really big pushes that the company makes that affect everybody. It affects product, it affects sales, it affects marketing, and it helps them prioritize. So there's one set of company strategic intents. They're prioritized 1, 2, 3, and I usually say there's no more than 3. If you're nice, I might give you 4, but no more than 3. Because otherwise, how do we prioritize? Then we start to look at our product strategy, and as a chief product officer, you're looking at all of your different product lines, and you're saying, how do they come together? And what's the vision of that? So what's the vision of my software strategy and the products we actually sell? Then it goes down a level further about the individual products, and we do the same thing. What's the vision of that? How am I going to win? What am I prioritizing? And then it gets to the team. And then the teams are like, what problems now that were defined at the portfolio and product level can I solve and build a solution around? And that's where we use discovery. So discovery happens over in that options, and then it goes up, but we should be doing discovery at each level as well. So again, if you are a smaller company, you'd probably have only 4 layers of this, but if you're a larger company, like a really, really big company with multiple product lines, you need that portfolio layer. Now, if you're a startup, none of this applies because you have not found product market fit yet. If you don't have product market fit, you have one goal: acquire customers. So don't make 8 years worth of plans, right? It will get thrown out. So this does not apply for startups. This only applies for scaling companies, for companies that are growing there. Now, what happens in a lot of organizations is that these guys, the C-suite, do not talk to each other and actually plan those strategic intents together. So sometimes, a lot of times what I observe is we roll out something like OKRs, and then every single C-suite leader has their own OKRs, and then those OKRs go into the team, and then they keep going, and none of those OKRs are aligned. So that's where we start getting, hey, marketing, like, you should be doing this. And it's like, no, these are my OKRs. And then the head of product is like, no, we need to be doing this. This is prioritized, not for me, not as sales. It's not prioritized here. So we have a lot of fighting. And then in some organizations, too, that were not traditionally software-led, we've got this, like, business role. It's like, what is that, right? What is the business role? So if anybody work in a bank, anybody like work in banks? Yeah, a couple people. You probably have a business person. And you're like, what's that mean? And those people traditionally saw product and technology as IT. So they were like, just go build these things. Help people get loans. Just build my features that I spec'd. So now these are at odds with each other. So what we're observing actually in the market, and I'm having really good conversations about this too, is that the product and the business are actually merging. people are finally seeing that the product is the business. And in this day and age, with software, if your product and business are not aligned and not merging almost to the same thing, you're going to be not winning. Because people who see this, which started in Silicon Valley selling SaaS companies, right? They see this, they're successful. Because they understand that even if you're a bank, most people are interacting with some kind of software layer there, and we can use software to be strategic, right? We can use better design to be strategic. We can make more money if these things come together, and we think about scaling through the product. So there's actually a lot of banks right now talking about this, and you're seeing these roles merge and product being much more aligned to the business or under the business. So what we need now is for all these guys to start to work together, right? We need this to be a team, and especially at the C-suite. So what should be happening is the C-suite gets together and they create what we call strategic intents. So they make one set of strategic intents, not 9, right? One set for the entire C-suite, and everybody's aligned to them. It's a common goal. So they say, we first all want to increase our retention in the small and medium business market, let's say, keep the people we have, make sure we don't have a leaky bucket. And second, we might move upmarket into the enterprise. That's second priority, though. There might be a third on here as well. So these guys got to get together and do that. But to figure out what each one of these levels are, we don't just make it up in November during a week where we go, oh, it's the end of the year, got a budget, let's write a list of stuff we want to do next year with no direction, no input. This happens all the time. Instead, we got to figure out how to actually do this continuously and get data in. So that's where the product kata comes. So the product kata is based on Toyota kata. I call this version the product kata. This is how I teach strategy to a lot of people. And Toyota kata is a continuous improvement framework that helps people learn and helps you set strategy and deploy it. So the way this looks is that the strategy from whoever's above you, unless you're the C-suite, comes into the organization. It comes into your level. It gets communicated down. Then what you do is you understand the direction. So you poke it and you ask questions. You go, do you mean this or this? What's our goal here? I don't understand this part. And you clarify. Once you understand the direction, now you're going to look at it and say, how does this apply to my world, right? Let me analyze the current state of what my world looks like compared to this new direction. And to do that, though, you need a bunch of data and analysis. So you go out and you start getting all that data and analysis. You analyze the current state and you say, okay, we are here and we want to go there. This is how far away we are. Once you know that, you can set the next goal. So you set the appropriate goal at your level, and you say, here's the part of our strategy, this is where we want to go, and then you execute towards the goal. And the execute towards the goal piece on a product team, that's where we do experiments, that's where we do our MVPs, that's where we're building and testing. This could be your discovery work, discovery work can happen in analyzing the current state. It can also happen to test the solution as you execute towards the goal. And then you are going to be building and testing and iterating. Once you get results from that, you feed it back into your loop, and you loop through this until you reach your goal. When you get to analyze the current state, and you're like, I'm at the goal, you're done, right? Now we set the next one, and we go next to it. So this actually applies across an organization. It goes up and down. So what really happens is we start with the executives, and they are doing the same thing. So they're setting the company vision and understand the direction. So the CEO usually sets the vision, gets a lot of feedback. That's their direction. And they also analyze the current state of where the company is. So for instance, if you want to move into the enterprise, are our products ready for that? Is our sales team ready for that? Right? Are we actually positioned well to do that? So that's them analyzing their current state. They're also looking at, is this an opportunity? Right? Should we be doing it? Is there enough money there? So a lot of market research goes in there. They deploy their stuff down to the CPO and the VPs of product. We do that at the portfolio level. We say, okay, based on these goals, what do our software products look like? How do we have to change? How do we have to evolve the portfolio vision? They set, again, a bunch of initiatives that go down to the next team, which could be VP of products or directors, depending on how big your organization is. That's the individual products, and then they go down to the teams. And the teams look at that and say, okay, let me think about what solutions we need to build to reach these goals. So what we're doing is we're going really broad with our visions that are super lofty, right? They're like far out. And we're breaking them down into manageable chunks for everybody as we go. But this isn't just a one-way loop. It actually feeds back as well. So we're going to be iterating on those solutions and those discoveries as our product team is, right, like for ourselves. But then we feed back that information to the next level. And we can come back and say, hey, you know, we did a bunch of discovery work, and I know that you set this product initiative, but I don't know if it's going to work for our customers. I got all this research back. I think we need to really rethink this. And you go, okay, let's go back and rethink it, right? Let's figure out what our strategy should be. So it's evolving, right? And that happens all the way up to the C-suite. So we're communicating our progress, we're communicating what we learned, and we're going all the way back up. And that's the real focus of the product kata and the strategy deployment, is to talk about what we learn, right? It's about enabling learning at each part of the organization and not just saying, hey, build that, right? And not taking into account where we are. And the good thing is, if this is deployed well in organizations, it solves a very hard problem for product managers, which is another question I get asked all the time, which is, how do I talk to my C-suite, right? How do I talk to the leaders and get buy-in for what I'm building? The answer to that is you speak their language, and their language is money, right? So when you can actually see your stuff ladder back up to those strategic intents, you know exactly how it's going to help the business, because you can now tell that story really clearly, and it's also very transparent to the organization about how you fit in. So we have to do all that alignment so that we can actually tell our story. And if you're having trouble telling this, it's usually that missing middle. It's those pieces are actually gone, and it's hard to tell your story when those pieces are gone. So that's a big part of actually doing strategy deployment. But when we look at the product kata, in order to do this well, we need this data and analysis piece, and we need that feedback flow. And that's where we start to plug in with the rest of the organizations, right? We plug in on analyzing our current state, and we plug in on actually being able to execute and get things out of the door, and then get feedback in if it's working. So once we set that product strategy, that's where product operations comes in. And product operations also helps us set product strategy well. So that's the key for here. So when you think about product operations, that's this part, right? That's getting the team working together to execute on a fantastic meal and a fantastic experience. It's getting all those pieces together. And like I said, this is fairly new, but a lot of companies are doing it. A lot of big companies. And it's emerging, and it's becoming a practice in many organizations. For me, I really got into this at Athena Health. I was leading a transformation across 5,000 people, 500 product teams, and everybody was doing something a different way. We implemented product operations because we saw the gaps of how do we bring this all together to work together. So that's where I really started doing it and coming up with this. But Stripe does it. Uber does it. Pendo does it, Airtable, Twilio, all these people have product operations in their organizations. So it's got to be doing something right. When we think about product operations too, we have a couple different pieces of this. So there's actually 3 facets to it. Now, you don't have to start with all of these too. I'll explain how you start and how you think about it. But these are the 3 main buckets that you want to think about these teams. And it's not the same people on each part of these working on it. The first one is business data and insights, and that's the collection of our internal data so that we can make business decisions. So think about it. How do you know that somebody adopted a product, right? That's usually where you're looking at your adoption metrics in Pendo or something like that, but bring it up a level. How do you know that you're entering the enterprise market well? You got to look at the financial data. If you're a chief product officer, you need to know how you're doing in your customer segments to make strategy decisions. If you're a product manager, you need to know how your product is performing to make strategy decisions. So this helps us get the information in our systems out and in a digestible way where we can get the information we need. The next piece is customer and market insights. Now, this is not replacing you. This is not doing it for you. This is making it easier for you to do customer and market insights, right? So this is about, hey, if I need to go talk to 20 customers, can I really afford to spend 4 weeks lining up those calls? What if they all say no? What if they don't want to opt into this, right? This is about building you the systems so that you can digest research that's been done in good ways, but also get in touch with the right people to do that research. The last one is about process and governance, and this is about scaling the product management value throughout the organization. So this is making sure that we're all communicating well with other teams and we're bringing them in at the appropriate areas. And it's also making sure that we are being transparent in what's happening out in product and giving the right templates, the right reports, the right kind of information back to leadership and back to the rest of the teams so that they don't come over to you every 3 seconds and be like, what are you doing? What are you doing? Are you doing my thing? So that's really what these pieces are. And it helps us standardize what we do as a product team. So for first business data and insights, remember how I said we have to look at all of this stuff? Well, a lot of it lives in our organization already, and some of it's on other teams, right? So it's about how do we get this information back into our systems. So for instance, in your financial data and implication on sales, there's a lot of stuff living in your finance systems. When I do product strategy with scale-ups and with other organizations, I pull that out, I dump it out, and then I start to look at which customer segments are giving us the most money, right? Or which products are giving us the most money. And we put it into context in ways that we can understand. If you think about data analysts helping us with user data, getting stuff out of Pendo, out of Amplitude, all that stuff, we know that we should be looking at that. But what we're trying to do is take all the information in a lot of different places and make it digestible and easy to read. And if you think about customer and user research in particular too, remember that it lives in some systems that we don't go into every day, like Salesforce. It lives in Salesforce, right? We have tons of sales calls in there. We have tons of information. And then it also lives in things like our customer support logs. Now we just got to make sure that the inputs into those are good, right? So that's what we're looking at here. So a lot of companies are starting here and trying to get the research back to people and streamlining this. So a great example is Fidelity. Fidelity is a really big investment firm in the United States. So Fidelity does our retirement accounts in the US, and they partner with big businesses. They provide retirement accounts. So they are a financial services company that was not traditionally software-led, but they are now moving that way, right? They really see the ambition there. So Jen Cardello and I worked at Athena Health together, and she helped do this at Athena Health, which was amazing. Now she's doing it at Fidelity on a huge scale. And what she did is she's a senior vice president of UX Insights and Research, and she runs a team there, and she runs a bunch of user researchers that help make it easier for product managers and the rest of the team to get the insights. So what she does is she plugs into this whole area of creating a product and helps people answer the questions they have at each area. So for instance, at idea creation, they might help people find the user research they need or get it to figure out what they should be doing and which way they should be going. So she's built systems that help log all the user research that's been done before, helps product managers search it so they can get answers faster, and then if their questions haven't been answered, that's when she helps them line up user research calls. So her team can go out, say, hey, we have a group of people who opted into doing user research here. We scan them for you. We know who's been contacted recently. Here's some people. I'll help you write the interview guide if you need it. She has a bunch of people who are new to product management too in Fidelity, so they help train them in user research, right? So they've trained over 350 people inside the organization on how to do good user research. And then they let them go, right? And then they say, go do it. We'll build the tools so that you do it faster, and we'll build the tools to help you. They also have a team that does strategic research, and this helps with things like market sizing. So if you come and you say, hey, we want to target a different market for this product, they'll go out and they'll help you get numbers on how big that market is, on whether it's a good opportunity, on competitive analysis, and they help feed that in so that you can make decisions about it too. So these types of teams can be extremely powerful because they help you get the data that you need. And that's a huge problem. I hear from product managers. It's like, I would love to do my job, but I need data. And my company doesn't think we need data. So how do we do it? You get these people to help streamline it. Another way that we can get data too is by working internally with the different teams. And this is where Pendo started with their product operations. So Pendo looked around and said, hey, our sales team and our product teams hate each other. That's nothing new, right? Everybody's like, yeah, similar to me. We got to do something about it. So sales is frustrated because product is like, no, I will not give you any roadmaps and I will not listen to you. And product's frustrated because sales comes over and yells about that. and goes, no, you need to be building X, Y, and Z because the customer wants it. So they're fighting. Things are not going well. So the CPO turns to Christine and said, hey, can you fix this? Set up a product operations team. And she did. So their product operations team started here. They went in and they said, sales actually has really good information, and we need to get it to the right people in the product team without them like harassing them every single day, right? We need to get there. But then we need to get some information back to sales to let them know what's coming up. So how can we do that? So she designed those systems. So she helped the salespeople create programs to get the right information into the right product teams. So they set them up with software systems, and they set them up with a repeatable cadence where they could meet and discuss what was top of mind, what were they hearing from customers, and they oriented those meetings to be very pinpoint focused on the problems they heard from customers, not feature requests, right? And then that helped a lot. And then in return, product was showing formats that were acceptable to sales about what was coming up. So they would discuss it in those meetings. They now had transparent software systems to actually be able to see those things, and now it's extremely smooth. So that's what we really need to focus on here. We did a little bit of this at Athena Health as well. So this is how product ops kind of got started at Athena Health. We saw that sales was overselling the roadmap like crazy. Never happens, right? Completely overselling it, nobody's happy. So what we did is we went and we talked to sales, and we realized that they did not understand that a prototype was not done. Everybody's getting into prototypes. The CEO at one point said, I want everybody to focus on building prototypes, which was a really good effort. So the teams all did that, and then they showed them to sales, and sales went, yay, it's live. And it's like, no, it's a Figma drawing. Well, this was before Figma, but that's what it was. So what we ended up doing was creating this system. And it really was language. We said, let's make buckets of work to discuss what stage an idea is at. So we'll start with discovery. And if it's in discovery, that means we're still doing user research and evaluating this opportunity. Then, if we realize it's a good opportunity, we go to experiment, right? So we're figuring out what problem to solve in discovery. Then we go to experiment, where we start experimenting around the solution. Once that solution's a little codified and crisp, then we get into alpha beta mode, and that's where we're testing it in more of a solution form and more of a software form and not just prototypes. So we're building out the first version, and we were a healthcare company, so I know with Agile we like to talk about continuous releases. You do not continuously release to doctors during surgery, right? Like that's not good. And we wanted to make sure we were testing it in a safe way, and then we could release it and train them on it when it was okay. So that's where those alpha beta modes come in. And we're testing it with a bunch of people. We're getting feedback. We're refining it. And then we've got generally available, which means it's live. So we told the sales team, we said, alpha beta, you can talk about it coming. It's not done yet. We're still testing it, but we could show a demo. When it's in beta mode, we'll show demos for people. And we'll tell them it'll be out in maybe like a quarter. We had like timelines associated with this. And generally available meant sell away. It's live. You can sell to anybody. We said in experiment and discovery mode, it's not ready yet. What you see, if it's labeled experiment, if you see a prototype, it might not get done. It might not look like that at the end. So don't show it to people. And they respected this. We had a contract, right? We made agreements about these things. And again, Jen had a design ops system too that plugged in with different research components along the way, where UX came and helped people as well. And then for product ops, we really concentrated on making sure that label was well known, and that the roadmaps were labeled with each of these phases. So when we go into the roadmap, it would say experiment on one of the solutions. And people knew, oh, that's not ready yet. So if they looked at the roadmap, it wasn't like they thought it was all done and coming up. So that was really important. The next piece of this, like I was talking about, is getting your roadmaps really transparent. So this is where a lot of larger companies start. If you are trying to make decisions as a product leader, and you have no idea what your teams are working on, it's really hard. So a lot of teams start with getting a roadmap software in there. Dragon Boat is a company that I advise. I like them a lot because they also help show your capacity and planning allocations so you know how many people are working on things, but they help refine your roadmap and give you insights into it. So as a leader or as a product manager, I know how we're spread across our initiatives. And it also tells us how that roadmap is helping us to achieve our goals in the company. So you need something like that, That's how you stop your executives from poking and questioning and changing their minds all the time, right? If you're like on a strategy push and they just set that strategy and they come in a quarter later and go, we're changing everything. And you go, why? It's usually because they don't know how it's tracking towards goals. So that's what we need to do. We need to align our roadmaps back to how they're unlocking business value. So we need tools to do that, and we need to make it transparent. When we have these strategies in this business as well, we now need to refine it and figure out how to review it with everybody. How do we have these conversations with people? And that's about cadences. So this is a big part that product operations takes on too. So you might have one person who defines what kind of meetings you have in an organization to discuss the product. A lot of times we use agile cadences for everything. You know, we're sprinting everywhere. Sprint, 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 sprint. But that only really affects the option level, right? That's right down here. So that is a daily, weekly thing. It's not a big strategy cadence, right? That's not good for the rest of the organization. So we can do our agile cadences, but we need more. So we should be reviewing our product strategy initiatives like monthly. So how are those product strategies aligning towards what we're doing as a team? Are we still on track? So you might do that with the product team, with the engineering team, with the design team. And then we go up a level and we say, hey, how's our portfolio strategy aligning back towards our product strategies, those big initiatives? How are we doing? This is where maybe more leaders come in cross-functionally, where we bring in some sales people, we bring in some marketing people, and we talk about the big pushes we're going to make. We want to review that quarterly, most likely. Then we want to also look at how we're reviewing our big company strategy. So this is really about, hey, we're over here with strategic intents. How far are we from completing those? How close are we? And do we need to actually start on the next strategic intent? So it's not about a yearly November meeting to define everything we're going to do for the next year. It's about meeting us where we are. So if we finish our strategy in June, we should be setting the next strategy. We don't need to wait till November for budget. We need to be adding things, and we need to continuously review these things. And if we do this and we look at the data, we can keep track of it. It's not a big push and a big rush at the end of the year. So product operations helps us define those meetings, figure out which meetings we need, how sales and marketing gets plugged in, how the operations get plugged in, the rest of the organization into these things so that we can all communicate together. And then the last thing they do that really helps is they help standardize some of these templates as well that help us talk about what we're doing. So for instance, if it touches other organizations, strategy memos. I love when people write strategy memos. Like, give me 3 pages of what we're doing with this product initiative, right? Tell me what the product strategy is, write me 3 pages. Do not make it a book, right? But tell me what we're doing and why we're doing it. Put some stuff in there. OKR reporting, how we actually have different reports, who gets those reports. You should have different reports for different audiences. Executives want to know how much money we're making, how we're on progress towards it, what we're unlocking. The product team and engineering team want to know different things, so we should have different types of reports for different audiences. Go-to-market documents, how we all get together and talk about our go-to-market strategy, and then roadmaps, for example. So product ops helps us define what our company version is of this, just like those Amazon, one-page strategy memos that you've seen, they're launch documents. That's what I'm talking about here. What are we using for our company, and how are we all aligning around it? This is great for onboarding product managers as well. If you want to bring in new people, this means they don't have to make everything up. It's like, here's how we do it, and you hand it to them. So if you do this all well, product ops actually helps us quite a bit. It helps us better communicate and collaborate with the rest of the organization. It brings people in, and it lets them know what's going on. You get better strategies and business outcomes, too. So we're getting data in, and we're talking to the right people, and we're collaborating, and we're talking about all these things, so we're going to get better strategies out of that. We get better product launches as well, because now we're communicating with marketing and sales and everybody else. And then we also get better onboarding for product managers, too, so it's easier to bring people in. So that's why I'm writing my next book on product operations. You can go to productoperations.com, and you can sign up to know when it's notified. It will be out hopefully in September. So if you were like, how do I actually do this more in detail, Melissa? I solved that for you. I just got to finish it. So now, you put all these things into place, and it will help tremendously. It's going to help your organization. Now you see people working better together, but you might still have some people who are not happy. So let's go back to this, right? We got some stakeholders that aren't happy. How do we convince them, right? How do we actually get them on our side to be more product-led? We gave them the knowledge. They're still not happy with the lack of control. What do we do? What you really want to do is empathy. And we empathize all day long with our customers, but sometimes we forget to empathize with the people in our organization. And if you want to be a product leader one day, I train chief product officers every day, I work with them every day. The best executives have a ton of empathy. And I bet you notice that too. Have you ever worked with somebody who has no empathy whatsoever? They kind of suck, right? You're like, I don't want to work with that person. So sometimes we have to remind ourselves of this, right? I have to remind myself of this, especially when someone's going crazy. You know, when somebody's like flying off the handle. You're like, oh, let me just think about where they are. Are they a founder CEO? And all of a sudden, we got product leading the way. And that founder CEO is coming and meddling. They're in there. They're like, do my thing, do my thing. Well, if you think about it, most founder CEOs have never been a CEO before. So they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing, right? They have no idea. And I work with a lot of them. And what they love is talking about their vision and their ideas. And what they also love is templates. So I give them templates. And I say, hey, you told me about, I'm not really sure what the vision is here. Like I know it's this, but can you tell me more about it? And what I do, and what I encourage you to do too, is go talk to them. And once they explain it to you, write it down. And then give it back to them and say, hey, is this what you meant? And they'll go, oh, yeah, that's it, or no. And you can say, I think the rest of the organization would really love something like this. Can we write this into a strategy doc? And they actually will work with that pretty well. It's a great technique for getting things out of people's heads. Just get it on paper. And also remember that they don't know what level they're at. So ask a lot of different whys. Okay, you want to build that thing. Why? Right? Why do you want to build that thing? Do you think we'll get more revenue? Is it for retention reasons? Tell me about it, right? But do not be dismissive where you're like, no, I make the decisions, get out of here, CEO. They hate that, right? That's not the way to really work with them. So remember, they don't know what they're doing. They're just figuring it out along the way. And a lot of them have not been CEOs before. But it's the same for sales. It's the same for marketing. A lot of people haven't worked this way before. So the more you empathize with that, the more you build those relationships, the easier it's going to be for you to actually work with them. So ask yourself, right, what are my practices and behaviors as a product person when it comes to these people? What am I doing to include them? Am I telling them, get out of my space because I make all the decisions? Or am I saying, hey, that's a really great idea. Let's dissect it together. Let's figure it out. Tell me more about it. What's going on here? Or, hey, I'm going to come to you in a month, and let's review these things together. Let's sit down, but let's set up this cadence for actually meeting. Because our practices and behaviors that we do as well start to define how we're working as a team and how we get to that great meal and that menu that we really want. So thank you very much for listening to this. We are going to take some questions. If you do want the slides, go to productslabs.com/beyond and fill out that little form, and you will get the slides. And then also, I have an online school if you're a product leader called CPO Accelerator, and Product Institute for product managers. It's all online to learn. And you can submit any other questions we can't answer right now to Product Thinking Podcast. I answer them every 2 weeks. So you go productthinkingpodcast.com. Everything's at productslabs.com. Let's go.
One question.
One question. Let's do it.
Oof.
Hi, Melissa.
Hi.
I really like the talk. Previously, I worked at a corporate, and I would have loved to know that before. Now I'm at a startup, and the question is, it's that crisis part where you're finding product market fit. How do you know you're there? That I don't want you to answer that, but how do you manage that strategy, that set of features that you want to release when you don't have the data, the context that validates
a lot of times startups are not about getting all the data from inside. It's more about how are you don't have any data, right? Like where are you going to get it from? So it's more about adoption, right? That's your only goal, adoption, acquisition. And once you start to get that traction, now we go, okay, how do we get retention, right? And it's a funnel that you follow. So most of your conversations in a startup are going to be qualitative with people, and then you're going to start to count when you get more traction. So you really want to focus on doing as many in-person customer things as you possibly can to know how they're using it, to get really deep on that. That's the only way you really get to product market fit, and you'll start to notice it scale, right? Once you see that traction. So a lot of startups, this is really about operationalizing companies when they start to scale, and you'll start to scale one day, so it's good to know about it before we get there. But the big thing when you're doing startups is like keeping that flow of information coming from the customers so that when you get to 100 customers, now you're going to start to get the good data, but you've been talking to them, so you know a lot of problems, you know what you need to solve, and you're making sure the data comes in. The trick, though, and where everybody falls in the build trap, is when you start to get the whole list of things you want to build, you find that traction, and you forget to keep talking to the customers. And that's how companies end up in the build trap.